Hello, weary traveler. Welcome back to the Candlelit Journal, a place of rest, of quiet stories, and of gentle firelight. Tonight, we return to the Crossroads Inn, where our innkeeper has been watching the midsummer world come alive. The long golden evenings stretch late into the night, and with them come stories of the creatures that share this frontier. The wolves that howl from distant ridges, the horses that carry burdens and dreams, the ravens that seem to watch with knowing eyes. In the pages ahead, you will hear tales from shepherds and foresters, from trappers and healers. You will learn the old beliefs that travelers carry with them like worn coins in their pockets, stories of animals that warn, that guide, that remember. So settle in. Let the warmth of the hearth find you, and listen as the innkeeper's pen scratches across the page, recording the wild company we keep.
The 17th day of June. The summer has settled over the crossroads like a warm hand pressed gently upon the land. I write tonight with the windows thrown open, for the air is thick and sweet with the scent of blooming clover, and even the stones of the inn seem to exhale the day's heat long after the sun has slipped behind the western hills. This evening brought me a curious gift, a moment of stillness in which I found myself watching a fox cross the road just as the light turned golden. She moved without hurry, her rust-colored coat catching fire in the sunset, and paused at the base of the ancient oak as though paying respects before slipping into the tall grass beyond. I stood in the doorway with the mug of cold well water in my hand and felt, not for the first time, that I share this crossroads with presences older and wilder than any human traveler. It is the animals, I think, that truly own this land. We build our inns and our roads. We clear our fields and dig out our wells. But they were here first. The wolves and the foxes, the deer and the ravens, the creatures that fly and crawl and burrow. We are guests in their world, though we often forget it. Tonight there are few travelers. A merchant rests in one of the private rooms, his cart loaded with bolts of linen, bound for the coastal markets. A young woman traveling alone has taken a pallet in the common room. She told me she is walking to her grandmother's homestead beyond the western plains, and she carries with her a cage containing a pair of songbirds she means to gift. The birds are small and gray, with touches of yellow at their throats. They have been singing softly all evening, filling the common room with music that seems too large for their tiny bodies. The merchant asked about the birds, and the young woman, her name is Sarah, told him they were called meadow finches, and that her grandmother believes they bring good fortune to a household. She says they sing away sorrow, Sarah explained, adjusting the cloth that covers their cage at night. That as long as they have voice, the home will know joy. I have heard this belief before, carried here by travelers from the southern lowlands where such birds are common. It is one of many ideas I've gathered over the years. These small wisdoms about the creatures of the world, these fragments of lore that pass from mouth to ear around my fire. Perhaps it is time I recorded some of them. The summer nights are long, and I find myself in a contemplative mood. Let me write then of the wild company we keep, of the animals that share our roads and our fields, our dreams, and our fears. Let me set down what the travelers have taught me and what I have observed myself in 13 years of keeping this Crossroads inn. The 18th day of June. I begin, as seems fitting, with horses. No animal is more essential to life at a crossroads than the horse. They arrive in all conditions, lathered from hard riding, calm from easy travel, skittish from storms, exhausted from roads that have run too long. I have learned to read a horse's temperament before I read its rider's face, for the animal often tells the truest story. This morning, I tended to a mare belonging to a courier who arrived just after dawn. She was a gray with dark points, her coat damp, and her eyes showing white at the edges. The courier, a young man with the lean, wind-burned look of someone who spends his life in the saddle, apologized for her state. "She's been spooking at shadows since we passed through the forest," he said. "I don't know what's gotten into her." I brought her water and oats and spoke to her in the low, steady tone my father taught me. Horses listen to the voice more than the words, he used to say. It is the quality of the sound that matters, whether it carries patience or hurry, calm or fear. She settled eventually, though she kept turning her head toward the road that led back the way they had come. "Perhaps she sensed a wolf," I offered. And the courier nodded, though he seemed unconvinced. "Perhaps," he said. Or perhaps she sensed something I could not. This is a belief I have encountered often among those who work closely with horses, that they perceive things beyond human senses. A farmer from the southern marshes once told me that horses can see spirits, particularly on moonless nights. "They'll stop dead and refuse to move," he said, "staring at nothing you can see, but it isn't nothing to them." Whether this is true, I cannot say, but I have seen horses behave strangely in places where no earthly danger seemed present, where the road passed near old stones or where the wind carried no scent of predator. Perhaps they feel currents in the air that we cannot. Perhaps their long history of flight from danger has sharpened senses we never developed. Or perhaps, as some believe, the world holds more than we can perceive, and horses simply stand closer to that veil than we do. The gray mare ate well and rested through the morning. When the courier departed at midday, she seemed calmer, though she turned her head one last time toward the eastern road before allowing herself to be led away. I watched them go and wondered what she had sensed in the forest. What presence, real or imagined, had followed her to my door. This afternoon brought a pair of brothers, young men with the rough hands of field workers, driving a cart loaded with hay for a settlement beyond the northern pass. They watered their draft horse, a massive bay with patient eyes, and took supper in the common room. Over bowls of cold root vegetable soup, they spoke of the farm they had left behind and the one they hoped to build. "Our father always kept goats," one of them said, Marcus, the elder. Said they was smarter than any dog and twice as stubborn. We're hoping to find some for sale at the northern markets." His brother Pell laughed. "Smarter, maybe, but they'll eat your whole barn if you let them." "Only if you're fool enough to leave it open," Marcus replied. "They told me stories of their father's goats, how one had learned to unlatch gates and led the whole herd into the family garden, devouring an entire summer's worth of vegetables in a single afternoon. How another had developed a taste for the laundry left drying on the line and had to be kept away from the clothes with a specially built fence. How the oldest nanny, the matriarch of the herd, had once alerted the family to a fire in the hay barn by bleating so insistently that their father woke from a sound sleep and ran outside to find flames licking at the walls. She saved the whole farm that night, Marcus said, his voice turning soft. We lost her the following winter, but we never forgot what she did. I have heard many such tales of animals proving their worth through acts that seem almost human. The dog that guards a child, the cat that kills a serpent before it can strike, the rooster that crows to wake a sleeping family as the river floods. These stories circulate among travelers like coins, passed from hand to hand until the original teller is forgotten, but the lesson remains. Animals are not mere tools, these stories seem to say. They are partners. They are kin. And they remember kindness or cruelty far longer than we might expect. The 19th day of June. Summer storms have been threatening all day, the clouds building into great towering columns over the eastern mountains. The air is heavy and still, that peculiar breathless quality that precedes a storm's breaking. The chickens in my small coop have been restless, and even the bees seem to have retreated to their hive. A healer arrived this morning, a woman of middle years named Thessa, with silver threading through her dark hair and a leather satchel worn soft from years of carrying. She is traveling north to gather herbs that grow only in the high meadows, plants whose healing properties are strongest when picked at midsummer. We sat together in the common room during the heat of the afternoon, both of us waiting for the storm that refuses to break. She told me of her work, the villages she visits, the ailments she treats, the remedies she has learned from other healers and from her own experimentation. But some of my best teachers, she said, have been animals. I asked her to explain, and she smiled, the smile of someone about to share knowledge that others might dismiss. Watch what the animals eat, she said. Watch what they seek out when they are ill. A dog with a bad stomach will search for certain grasses. A wounded deer will lie in clay-rich mud. Cats seek out catnip, not for pleasure alone. It drives away fleas and calms their nerves. The animals knew these things long before we did. She told me of a wolf she had once observed from a distance, a young male with a wounded leg. Rather than rest in the usual fashion, he had traveled to a stream fed by mineral-rich springs and lain in the shallows for hours, letting the water flow over his injury. The minerals speed healing, Thessa explained, We use those same springs to treat wounds in humans, but the wolf knew without being taught. This idea that animals carry their own forms of knowledge, their own medicine, stayed with me through the afternoon. I have seen cats chew on the herbs I hang above the hearth, ignoring most but returning again and again to certain bundles. I have watched birds select specific twigs and leaves for their nests, rejecting others that look identical to my eyes. Perhaps they know things we have forgotten or never knew at all. When the storm finally broke in the evening, a great release of thunder and rain that drummed on the roof like 1,000 small hooves, Thessa and I sat by the fire and spoke of other things, but her words about the wolf have stayed with me. I find myself watching the animals differently now, wondering what they might teach if I only knew how to listen. The 20th day of June. The storm passed in the night, leaving the world washed clean and glistening. Water drips from every leaf and eave, and the road is turned to mud that will take days to dry. The crossroads themselves have become a mirror, reflecting the pale morning sky. No travelers arrived last night, trapped no doubt by the weather, but today has brought a steady stream of those who waited out the storm and now hurry to make up lost time. Among them is a forester named Aldrich, a lean, quiet man with scars on his hands and a way of moving that suggests he is more comfortable in the woods than among people. He is traveling west, he tells me, to take up a position managing timber for one of the new homesteading settlements. But he grew up in the great pine forests to the north, and it is those forests he speaks of when I ask him about the animals he has known. The wolves are what most people ask about, he says, settling into a chair by the cold hearth, for it is too warm for fire, though the stones still breathe out the ghost of last night's flames. They want to know if I've ever been attacked, if I've fought them off with my bare hands. He smiles, a rare expression that transforms his weathered face. People tell themselves stories about wolves. Makes them feel brave just to hear them. And the truth, I ask? The truth is I've lived among wolves for 30 years and been attacked exactly never. He takes a long drink from his mug. Oh, I've seen them, heard them, once found myself between a mother and her cubs and had to back away slowly, heart in my throat. But they're not looking to fight. Not unless they're starving or cornered. Mostly they just want to be left alone. He speaks of the wolves' intelligence, how they coordinate hunts with a precision that rivals any human strategy, how they care for their wounded and their old, how they remember faces and places for years. I knew a pack that avoided a certain valley for a generation, he says. Their great-grandparents had been trapped there by hunters. The young wolves had never seen a trap, never lost a pack member to one, but still they knew. How? I ask. The old ones taught them. Wolves pass down knowledge just like we do. They have stories too. Maybe not in words, but in behaviors, in warnings, in the way they raise their young to fear certain things. We call them beasts, but they have culture, history, memory. I write this down as he speaks, my pen scratching across the page while his words fill the common room outside. The oak tree drips steadily onto the muddy crossroads, and somewhere in the distance, a raven calls. People fear what they don't understand, Aldrich says eventually, and they don't want to understand wolves. It's easier to make them into monsters. Then you don't have to feel bad about killing them. He finishes his drink and rises to go. At the door he pauses. But the forests are quieter now, he says, in the places where the wolves are gone. Quieter and stranger, as if something important is missing. He shakes his head. That's what I think about sometimes. What we lose when we drive them out. Not just the wolves themselves, but whatever they were keeping in balance. I watch him walk away down the western road, his forester's stride carrying him toward new territory. His words stay with me longer than his footprints in the mud. The 21st day of June, Midsummer's Day. The sun has stretched its arc to its fullest extent, lingering in the sky as if reluctant to depart. I have hung bundles of fresh herbs above every door and window, an old custom my father observed, meant to welcome the season's abundance and ward off misfortune. The inn is full tonight, an unusual occurrence even at the height of summer. Word has apparently spread that a traveling fair has set up in the village 2 days' journey to the west, and many are hurrying to see it before it moves on. Among my guests are a family with 3 young children, all of whom are too excited to sleep, a cloth merchant traveling with a silent apprentice, and a shepherd who has just sold his flock and is returning home with heavy pockets and a heavier heart. The shepherd's name is Rowan. He is old, older than my father would be if my father still lived, with a face like weathered wood and hands that seem to remember the shape of his crook even when empty. He sits by the window looking out at the darkening sky and speaks little. When the others have retired and the children have finally exhausted themselves into sleep, I bring him a small cup of the honey wine I save for special occasions. He accepts it with quiet thanks. 40 years, he says, without preamble, as if continuing a conversation we had already begun. I've tended sheep for 40 years, my father's flock before me and his father's before that. And now? I ask, settling across from him. Now I'm too old. My legs won't carry me over the hills anymore. My eyes can't pick out a lost lamb in the mist. He drinks, his throat working. So I sold them, every last one, to a young man who'll treat them well, I hope. We sit in silence for a moment. The candle between us, the white candle that has burned since maybe about the first winter, never diminishing, flickers in a draft I cannot feel. Tell me about them, I say. Your sheep. He looks at me then, surprised. Perhaps he expected pity or platitudes, not curiosity. But something in my request opens a door in him and he begins to speak. He tells me of sheep as individuals, not a uniform flock, but distinct personalities with names and histories. The clever ones who learned to unlatch gates. The stubborn ones who would plant their feet and refuse to move no matter the provocation. The gentle ones who would come to him when called, pressing their woolly heads against his hands. People think sheep are stupid, he says. They're not. They're cautious. They watch and wait and remember. A sheep will remember your face for years. It will remember kindness. It will remember cruelty. You can't fool a sheep twice with the same trick. He speaks of their social bonds, how they form friendships that last their entire lives, how a sheep will mourn a lost companion, bleeding and searching for days, how mother ewes recognize their lambs by voice, by scent, by some quality invisible to human senses. I had a ewe once he says, who adopted every orphaned lamb in the flock. Didn't matter whose it was. If a mother died, old Bess would take over, fed them, cleaned them, protected them as if they were her own. She must have raised 30 lambs that weren't hers. 30 lives saved by one small act of generosity, repeated it again and again. His eyes are wet now, though he makes no move to wipe them. I say nothing, only listen. I don't expect you to understand, he says. To most people, they're just livestock, wool and meat. But to me, they were... He stops, searching for the word. Company. They were the wild company I kept through good years and hard ones, through blizzards and droughts and everything in between. I understand, I say, and I mean it. In my own small way, with my chickens and my stable horses and the birds that nest in my rafters, I know what it means to share your life with creatures who cannot speak, but who communicate nonetheless. Rowan finishes his wine and rises to go to his bed. To the door, he turns back. Take care of the ones in your keeping, he says. It goes faster than you think. The 22nd day of June, a strange morning. I woke before dawn to find a raven sitting on my windowsill, watching me with eyes like polished coal. It made no move to fly when I stirred, only tilted its head, as if considering me. After a long moment, it spread its wings and dropped into the half-light, disappearing toward the oak tree. Ravens have always unnerved me, though I'm not sure why. Perhaps it is their intelligence, so evident in their gaze. Perhaps it is the old stories that cluster around them like shadows. When I went downstairs to prepare breakfast, I found that a traveler had arrived during the night. A woman dressed in dark clothing, sitting in the common room as if she had been there for hours. She introduced herself as Marin and said she was journeying to the coastal towns on family business that she did not elaborate upon. Over breakfast, the conversation turned to ravens. I mentioned my morning visitor, and Marin's expression grew thoughtful. They are messengers, she said, stirring honey into her porridge, or so my grandmother believed. When a raven appears at your window, someone is trying to send you word. Word of what? I asked. That depends on the message. She smiled, though there was little warmth in it. Death, sometimes. Change always. Ravens stand, and at the threshold between worlds, they see what is coming before it arrives. I asked her to tell me more of her grandmother's beliefs, and she obliged. Tales of ravens guiding lost souls, of ravens warning villages of approaching danger, of ravens carrying the spirits of the dead to their final rest. In her grandmother's tradition, harming a raven was the greatest of taboos, for you never knew whose spirit you might be disturbing. But they are also tricksters, she added. They like to play jokes on humans, steal shiny things, mimic voices, lead hunters in circles. My grandmother said, you should never trust a raven entirely. Respect it, yes, but trust it, never. The raven has not returned to my window, though I have seen it, or one very like it, perched in the oak tree throughout the day. It seems to be watching the crossroads, as if waiting for something or someone. Perhaps it is only searching for food. Perhaps it is something more. I find that I am looking forward to learning what, if anything, it might be trying to tell me. Late evening now. The summer darkness has finally arrived, soft and warm, and the inn has settled into its nighttime rhythms. The family with children left this morning for the fair. The merchant and his apprentice followed soon after. Only a few guests remain, Marin in her private room and a pair of traders who arrived at dusk and are now sharing stories over the last of the ale. One of the traders, a woman named Joss, has been telling tales of the sea. She transports goods between the coastal harbors and the inland markets, and she has spent more of her life on boats than on land. Her stories are full of creatures I have never seen. Whales that sing, fish that glow in the darkness, things with too many limbs that surface briefly before vanishing back into the deep. But the strangest animals I know, she says, are the ones I grew up with. Cats. The other trader, her partner Ven, laughs. Cats aren't strange, they're just lazy. Cats are the strangest animals in the world, Joss insists. They see things we don't. They know things they shouldn't, and they never, ever tell you what they're thinking. She speaks of the Schist's cat she keeps on her vessel, a gray tom named Smoke, who has sailed with her for 12 years. He warns her of storms before any barometer, she claims. He alerts her to leaks and fires and stowaways. He once led her to a crate that had been mislabeled, containing not the spices listed on the manifest, but a collection of stolen jewelry. He saved my life more than once, Joss says. And I don't understand him at all. That's what I mean by strange. Dogs, you can understand. Horses, goats, chickens, they're straightforward. But cats are mysteries wrapped in fur. Ven shakes his head, unconvinced. But I find myself thinking of the cat that sometimes visits my kitchen, a tortoiseshell who appears without announcement and leaves the same way, accepting food and warmth as if they are her due. She has never belonged to me precisely, but she has been part of my life for years. Perhaps that is the nature of cats, as Joss suggests. They belong only to themselves and tolerate our company when it suits them. My mother used to say cats protect the home from ill spirits, Joss continues, that they stand guard at the threshold, just like ravens. The visible when the invisible meet in a cat's eyes, she said. That's why they glow in the dark. Nonsense, Ven says. Their eyes reflect light. It's a simple physical property. Perhaps, Joss allows. But that doesn't mean my mother was wrong. I record their conversation faithfully, for I have learned that truth and nonsense are not always as easily separated as Venn believes. The world is full of things that science cannot yet explain, and the old beliefs often carry wisdom, even when their explanations fall short. A cat's eyes may reflect light through physical means, but that does not negate the observation that cats seem to perceive more than we do. Both things can be true at once. The 23rd day of June, a quiet day, hot and still. The road has dried from the storm, though ruts remain where wagon wheels carve too deeply into the softened earth. I spent the morning in the kitchen garden coaxing vegetables to grow in the summer heat, and the afternoon repairing a loose hinge on the stable door. Only one traveler arrived, a young man on foot, carrying a pack nearly as large as himself. He introduced himself as Nico and said he was walking to the northern mining camps to seek work. He is perhaps 20 years old, with the hopeful uncertainty of someone venturing into the world for the first time. Over supper, he told me of his village in the southern lowlands, a small place surrounded by marshes, where the people make their living harvesting reeds and fishing the slow rivers. He spoke of the animals common to that region, many of which I have never seen. The herons are largest, he said. They stand in the shallows like statues, waiting for fish. Sometimes they don't move for hours. The old people say they're remembering the world from before humans came. He told me of frogs that sing entire swamps to sleep, of turtles that live longer than any person can remember, of snakes that swim through the water as easily as through the air. His voice was soft with homesickness, though he tried to hide it. And the fireflies, he added, his face brightening. In summer, the marsh is filled with fireflies, thousands of them, maybe millions, all blinking in patterns. Some people say they're the souls of the dead, dancing. Others say they're just insects looking for mates. I think maybe they're both. This is the second time in as many days that someone has suggested two truths can exist simultaneously: the scientific and the spiritual, the physical and the metaphysical. I find this idea comforting somehow. It suggests that understanding the world does not require choosing one explanation over another, but rather holding multiple truths in balance. Nico asked if I'd ever seen a firefly, and I admitted I had not. In the uplands where the inn sits, they are rare or absent entirely, but he described them so vividly, their soft green light, their silent flight, the way they transform the darkness into something magical, that I could almost see them myself. If you ever come to the marshes in summer, he said, I'll show you where they gather. It's the most beautiful thing I know. I thanked him for the offer, though I suspect I will never take him up on it. My life is here at the crossroads, where the roads meet and the travelers pass through. But I am grateful for the window he opened onto a world I will never see. A world of herons and fireflies, of singing frogs and ancient turtles. These things exist somewhere, even if not here, and the world is richer for their presence. The 24th day of June. The merchants have been arriving in greater numbers these past few days, drawn by the promise of the Western Fair and the good weather for traveling. Today brought a cart heavy with caged birds, not the small songbirds like Sarah's finches, but larger creatures with bright plumage. Parrots, the merchant called them. He has brought them from the eastern ports, where they arrive on ships from lands so distant that no one can say precisely where they originate. The colors are astonishing. Reds like fresh blood, greens like spring leaves, blues like summer sky, yellows that seem to generate their own light. I found myself staring at them for longer than was polite, marveling at the variety of life the world contains. "They can learn to speak," the merchant said, noting my interest. "Not just sounds, actual words, phrases. Some say they can hold conversations, though I've never seen it myself." He told me of a wealthy family in one of the coastal cities who keeps a parrot that has been passed down for 3 generations. The bird speaks in the voices of the dead, repeating phrases its original owners taught it 100 years ago. "Imagine hearing your great-grandmother's words from a bird's beak," he said. "It would make you believe in spirits, wouldn't it?" I thought of the raven at my window, of Marin's grandmother's beliefs, of all the ways birds seem to stand between the living and the dead. Perhaps it is their ability to fly, to move between earth and sky, between the realm we inhabit and the unreachable heights above, that gives them this connection to the spirit world. Or perhaps it is something simpler. Birds are witnesses. They see what we do not. They remember what we forget. The merchant moved on with his cargo of color and voice, but I find myself thinking still of that century-old parrot, speaking in the language of the dead. What would it be like to hear my father's voice again, even from such a strange source? What would I give for the chance? This evening brought a trapper, a rough-hewn man named Bram, with scars on his forearms and a smell of pine sap and wood smoke clinging to his clothes. He trades in furs and pelts, traveling from the deep forest to the lowland markets and back again in an endless cycle. I do not entirely approve of his profession, though I understand its necessity. The frontier settlers need warm clothing, and there are few alternatives to animal fur in the coldest regions. But I cannot help thinking of Aldrich's words about the forests growing quieter, about what we lose when we drive the wild creatures away. Still, I served Bram supper and ale, and I listened as he spoke of his work. There is knowledge in what he does, knowledge born of years spent tracking and observing. He knows the habits of every fur-bearing animal in the northern woods, where they den, how they raise their young, what they eat and feel and desire. "Beavers are the cleverest," he said, tearing a piece of bread with stained fingers. "They change the land itself to suit their needs, dam a stream, flood a valley, create whole new ponds and meadows. Some people hate them for it, flooding roads, ruining farmland, but I respect it. They're not just living in the world, they're building their own. He spoke of beaver lodges with something like admiration, the intricate architecture, the multiple chambers, the underwater entrances that protect against predators. They're engineers, he said, better than most humans I know, and they mate for life. Stay with one partner until death parts them, then grieve, sometimes for years, before finding another. I asked if he felt guilt for trapping creatures so intelligent, and he considered the question seriously before answering. Sometimes, he admitted, but guilt is a luxury. The settlers need furs or they freeze. The markets need pelts or the trade dies. I'm part of a chain that's bigger than me. He took a long drink of ale. I try to trap clean and quick. I try not to take more than the forest can spare. That's the best I can do. It is not enough, perhaps, but it is more than many would offer. I find myself respecting Bram's honesty, even as I grieve for the creatures whose lives end in his traps. The world is not simple, and those who pretend it is are either foolish or lying. The 25th day of June. A letter arrived today, carried by a courier, passing through on his way to the eastern coast. It was addressed not to me, but to a traveler who apparently passed through some weeks ago. A scholar, the courier said, researching the old ruins in the forest to the west. I set the letter aside, hoping the scholar might return this way, and thought about the nature of messages. How many letters have I held in my hands meant for people I will never meet? How many words have passed through this inn, seeking their destinations? The courier stayed for a meal resting his horse, a chestnut mare with an easy temperament, and we spoke of his routes. He travels constantly, carrying correspondence between settlements that are too distant for regular communication. It is lonely work, he admitted, but he has grown to love it. The road teaches you things, he said, things you couldn't learn staying in one place. I've seen every kind of weather, every kind of person, every kind of landscape. I watched the seasons change across the whole breadth of the land. Most people only know their own small corner. I know the shape of the world. He told me of animals he has encountered on his journeys, herds of wild horses on the western plains, their manes streaming in the wind, mountain goats scaling cliffs that seemed impossible to climb, bears fishing in rivers, standing chest deep in rushing water with patience that rivaled any monk's. But the strangest thing I ever saw, he said, was a wolf that followed me for 3 days. Not hunting me, just following, keeping pace. I'd look back over my shoulder, and there she'd be, trotting along at a distance, watching me with those yellow eyes. What happened? I asked. On the 3rd day, I came to a fork in the road. I was going to take the northern route, shorter, but through rough country. But the wolf stopped at the fork and wouldn't come any further, just sat down and stared at me. So I took the southern route instead. And he smiled. And later I heard that the northern road had been washed out by flooding. A whole section of it collapsed into a ravine. If I had taken it, I would have ridden straight into disaster. "The wolf warned you," I said. "The wolf warned me," he agreed. Or maybe it was coincidence. Maybe she just decided that was far enough to follow. But I choose to believe she was watching out for me. The animals know things, I think. They see the shape of what's coming. And sometimes, if we're lucky, they share what they know. The 26th day of June, today, I spent in the stable brushing the horses of a merchant caravan that arrived late last night. There are 4 of them, 2 matched bays and 2 grays, and they have traveled far, their muscles tired and their coats dull from weeks on the road. I have always found grooming horses meditative. The repetitive motion, the warm animal smell, the sound of their breath, and the shifting of their weight, it's still something in my mind that is usually restless. My father used to say that time spent with horses was never wasted, and I have found this to be true. The caravan master, a heavy-set man named Thomas, joined me in the stable midway through the morning. He watched me work in silence for a while before speaking. "You've got a good hand with them," he said. "Where did you learn?" "My father taught me," I answered. "He built this inn and the stable with it. Said, if you're going to serve travelers, you'd better know how to serve their animals too." Tomas nodded. "Smart man. Half the innkeepers I meet don't know one end of a horse from the other. Charge you for hay and give the beasts moldy scraps." We spoke of horses then, their breeds and temperaments, their ailments and cures, the signs that distinguish a healthy animal from a sick one. Thomas has been a caravan master for 20 years, and his knowledge runs deep. "The thing about horses," he said, "is that they're honest. They can't lie. If they're scared, you'll know it. If they're happy, you'll know it. If they trust you, they'll show it. If they don't, they'll show that too." "Unlike people," I said. "Unlike people," he agreed. Horses are a relief, honestly. After a day of haggling with merchants who smile while they cheat you, it's nice to spend time with a creature that means exactly what it says. He told me of his favorite horse, a mare he had owned years ago, before the demands of running caravans forced him to keep multiple animals and rotate them regularly. Her name was Star, he said, had a white blaze right between her eyes. She could read my mood before I knew it myself. If I was angry, she'd turn skittish until I calmed down. If I was sad, she'd press her head against my chest like she was trying to comfort me. "What happened to her?" I asked, though I suspected I knew the answer. "Old age," he said. "She lived a good life and died peacefully in her sleep. 18 years she gave me. 18 years of partnership. There's no bond quite like the one between a person and their horse." I thought of the gray mare from a few days ago, the one who spooked in the forest. I thought of rowan sheep mourning their lost companions. I thought of all the animals that have passed through this inn, each one carrying its own history, its own fears, its own hopes. We share this world with so many other souls. How strange that we so often forget it. Late night now. The caravan has bedded down, and the inn is quiet, except for the creaking of old wood and the occasional stamp of a hoof from the stable. I am sitting in my chamber beneath the sloped roof, writing by the light of a single candle. Through my window, I can see the ancient oak tree silhouetted against the summer stirs. Something is perched in its branches. The raven, I think, though at this distance and in this light, it is hard to be certain. It has been there for hours, watching the crossroads as it did before. I find myself wondering about its life. Does it have a mate somewhere, waiting for its return? Does it remember other crossroads, other inns, other innkeepers who watched it from their windows? Ravens live long lives, longer than many other birds. This one might have seen my father build this inn. It might remember a time before the crossroads existed at all. The thought makes me feel small, but not in an unpleasant way. Rather, it reminds me of my place in a larger story, a story that began before my birth and will continue long after my death. I am a single page in a much longer book, a single verse in an endless song. The raven knows this. Perhaps all the animals do. Perhaps that is why they watch us with such patient eyes, waiting to see what we will do with our brief moment in the light. The 27th day of June. A healer arrived today with a different purpose than Thessa, who gathered herbs. This one, a young man named Eben, tends to animals themselves. I did not know such a profession existed until today. I had assumed that farmers and shepherds simply cared for their own beasts, learning through experience what ailed them and how to provide relief. But Eben travels from settlement to settlement, offering his skills to any who need them. Animals get sick just like people, he explained over a lunch of cold meat and bread. They have the same kinds of ailments, fevers, infections, breaks and sprains. They feel pain. They need care. But most people can't afford to pay a healer to tend a sheep or a cow. So I offer my services for trade. A meal, a night's lodging, whatever they can spare. He told me of the cases he has treated. A horse with a badly healed leg, a dog poisoned by eating something foul, a cat with a growth in its belly that he was able to remove through careful surgery. His face lit up when he spoke of his successes, the animals he had saved, the gratitude in their owner's eyes. The animals are grateful too, he said. They know when they've been helped. I had a goat once who followed me around for the rest of my visit after I drained an abscess from her hoof. Wouldn't let me out of her sight. Even tried to follow me when I left. I asked him how he had come to this work, and his story was unexpected. I was training to be a healer for humans, he said. Spent 2 years studying under a physician in one of the coastal cities. But I discovered I had more patience for animals than for people. Humans complain they distrust. They refuse to follow instructions and then blame you when they don't get better. Animals just let you help them. That seems unkind to people, I suggested. He shrugged. Perhaps, but it's also true. Animals have a simple honesty that humans lack. They don't pretend to be brave when they're scared. They don't hide their pain to seem strong. They just feel what they feel and trust you to respond. I find that easier to work with. I thought of Thomas' words from yesterday that horses are honest because they cannot lie. Eben seemed to be saying something similar, though from a different angle. Perhaps the appeal of animals lies precisely in their transparency, in the way they offer us access to emotions unclouded by the social masks humans learn to wear. Before he left, Eben examined my chickens at my request. They had seemed listless lately, and I worried about disease. He found nothing serious, only the heat of summer making them lethargic. Give them extra water, he advised, and shade. They'll perk up when the weather cools. Such simple advice, but I was grateful for it. We think we know the creatures in our keeping, but there's always more to learn. The 28th day of June. A letter arrived for me today, a genuine letter, not one meant for another. It came from a woman I do not know, a stranger from the eastern coast, and its contents was strange indeed. She had heard of my inn, she wrote, from a traveler who passed through her village. She had heard of the white candle that never diminishes, of the hospitality I offer to all who come, of the crossroads where the paths of the world seem to converge, and she had a question. Her husband, she explained, had died 6 months ago. In the weeks after his death, a dog had appeared at her door, a large brown dog with gentle eyes, who had taken up residence without invitation and refused to leave. The dog bore but no collar, answered to no name, and seemed to belong to no one in the village, but it had attached itself to her completely, following her everywhere, sleeping at the foot of her bed, watching over her with what she described as profound attentiveness. Her question was simple. Did I know what this meant? I sat with her letter for a long time, reading it over and over. I thought of all the stories I had gathered this past week, of wolves that warn, ravens that message, cats that guard the threshold between worlds. I thought of the old beliefs that travelers carry like worn coins, the wisdom that persists even when we cannot explain it. Then I sat down and wrote my reply. I told her that I could not say with certainty what the dog's presence meant. I am an innkeeper, not a sage or a seer, but I shared what I've observed over 13 years of listening to travelers' tales. Animals, I wrote, often seem to appear when we need them most. They offer companionship that asks nothing's return, comfort that requires no words, presence that reminds us we are not alone. Perhaps the dog was sent by her husband, I suggested, not literally, but through the mysterious workings of a world that contains more than we understand. Perhaps it was simply a stray who recognized in her a person who needed company. Perhaps both explanations were true at once, as so many things seem to be. What matters, I concluded, is not where the dog came from, but that It is there. Let it comfort you. Let it remind you that love takes many forms, and not all of them are human. That is my advice, for whatever it is worth. I sealed the letter and gave it to a courier heading east, and I do not expect to hear from the woman again. But I find myself hoping that my words brought her some small measure of peace. We are all navigating the wilderness of grief at one time or another, and any guide, human or animal, is welcome on that journey. The 29th day of June. The summer heat has intensified, and the inn is quiet during the day as travelers wait until evening to continue their journeys. I spent the afternoon in the shade of the oak tree, something I rarely do. Usually I am too busy with the demands of the inn, but today the stillness seemed to invite me out to sit. I sat with my back against the ancient trunk and watched the crossroads. The dust lay undisturbed in the heat haze, and nothing moved except the occasional flutter of a bird. It was peaceful in a way that verged on loneliness, but I did not feel alone. The tree hummed with life. Insects crawled along its bark, following paths invisible to my eyes. Birds called from its upper branches. Somewhere deep within, I imagined, other creatures made their homes. Squirrels and mice, perhaps, or the owls that sometimes call in the night. I thought about this tree, how old it might be, how many travelers it had sheltered, how many storms it had weathered. Trees are not animals in the way we usually think of them, but they are alive. They grow and heal and respond to their environment. Some say they even communicate with each other through their roots or through the air, in languages we cannot hear. A traveler told me once that in his homeland there are forests so old that people believe the trees have souls. They pray to the trees before cutting them, asking forgiveness. They plant new saplings for every tree they fell, repaying their debt to the forest. I do not know if trees have souls. I do not know if any of us have souls. Truly, if what we call the soul is real, or simply the name we give to the experience of being alive. But I know that sitting beneath this oak, I felt a kind of communion, a sense that I was part of something larger than myself, something that breathed and grew and endured through centuries. Perhaps that is why the animals know that we have forgotten, that we are not separate from the world, but woven into it, that every creature, the wolf and the raven, the sheep and the horse, the dog that appears at a widow's door, is part of the same great fabric. That loneliness is an illusion, because we are never truly alone. The 30th day of June. Tomorrow is the first day of July, and the summer is now half gone. I find myself looking back over these entries with something like surprise. I did not intend to write so much about animals when I began. I meant only to record a few observations, a few travelers' tales, but the subject has a way of growing, each story leading to another, each creature opening a door to new territory. What have I learned? That animals are not so different from us, perhaps. That they feel and remember and mourn. That they form bonds with each other and with us. Bonds that can endure beyond death and distance. That they know things we do not, perceive things we cannot, and occasionally share their knowledge with those who pay attention. I have learned that the world is full of wild company, companions we did not seek, but who find us anyway, presences that share our roads and our fields, our dreams and our fears. I have learned that hospitality extends beyond human guests, that welcoming the travelers who walk on four legs is as important as welcoming those who walk on two. And I have learned that writing these things down matters. The stories would be lost otherwise, scattered like seeds in the wind, never taking root. But here, in this journal, they are preserved. Someone may read them one day and remember. Someone may carry them forward into a future I will never see. A traveler arrived tonight just as the stars were appearing. He is an old man walking alone with a staff carved from oak wood and a pack worn thin by years of use. He gave his name as Call and said he was making a pilgrimage. Where to, he did not say. Over supper, I told him about the raven that has been watching my inn. He listened with interest, eating slowly, his eyes bright with attention. Ravens are sacred in my tradition, he said. We believe they carry souls between worlds. When a person dies, a raven comes to guide them to what comes next. Do you believe that literally? I asked. He considered the question. I believe it truly, if not literally. The raven is a symbol, a way of understanding something too large for words. Whether a physical bird actually carries a physical soul is beside the point. What matters is the meaning we find in the image. This seemed wise to me, and I told him so. You're an innkeeper, he said, so you understand better than most. Every night you welcome strangers into your home. You give them food and shelter and a place to rest. You don't know their stories. You can't know them all. But you trust that they have stories, that their lives have meaning, that they deserve care regardless of whether you understand them. Yes, I said. It is the same with animals. We cannot know their inner lives. We cannot understand their experiences the way we understand our own. But we trust that they have inner lives, that their experiences matter, that they deserve care regardless of whether we understand them. That is the essence of compassion, extending kindness beyond the limits of our knowledge. He finished his meal and went to his room, leaving me alone in the common room with his words echoing in my mind. The first day of July. I end this series of entries as I began, watching a creature I do not understand. The raven came to my window again this morning, just as dawn was breaking. It sat on the sill and looked at me with those dark, knowing eyes. I looked back. For a long moment, we regarded each other in silence. Then it made a sound, not a call exactly, something softer, almost like a murmur. It tilted its head as if asking a question. and I found myself speaking aloud. "I don't know what you want," I said, "but you're welcome here. Whatever you are, wherever you came from, you're welcome." The raven spread its wings and flew away toward the oak tree and beyond. I watched it disappear into the brightening sky and felt for just an instant that something had been exchanged between us. A greeting, perhaps, an understanding, a promise, the wild company we keep. I will continue to write of them, I think, in the days and months and years to come. They are part of my story now, as I'm part of theirs. Together, we share this crossroads, this inn, this life, and for that I am grateful. The second day of July. The summer heat broke last night in a sudden thunderstorm, and this morning the world seems washed clean. Water stands in puddles along the crossroads, reflecting the clear blue sky, and the air carries that peculiar freshness that follows rain, a smell of wet earth and growing things, of renewal. I spent the early hours walking the perimeter of the inn, checking for damage from the storm. A loose shingle had been torn from the stable roof, and one of the shutters on the eastern side had come unlatched and was banging in the lingering wind. Small repairs, easily managed, but as I worked, I noticed something unusual. Footprints in the mud. Not human footprints. These were the prints of a large animal, something with paws rather than hooves. They led from the road to the base of the oak tree, circled it twice, and then disappeared into the tall grass beyond. A wolf, perhaps, or a large-ish dog. I could not tell from the prints alone, and by the time I thought to follow them, they had vanished into the still wet vegetation. But I found myself looking at the oak tree with new eyes, wondering what creature had circled it in the night, what purpose had drawn it here. The old beliefs hold that the crossroads are places of power, boundaries where different paths, different worlds, different possibilities meet. Perhaps the animals feel this too. Perhaps they come to the crossroads for reasons as meaningful as any human pilgrims, seeking something they cannot name but know they need. A family arrived mid-morning, a man and woman with 2 small children, traveling from the lowlands to visit relatives in the mountain settlements. The children were excited after the storm, pointing at puddles and jumping in them despite their mother's protests, and their laughter filled the common room with a brightness that has been absent for days. The family brought with them a dog, a brown and white hound with long ears and an expression of perpetual worry. His name, the father told me, was Bramble, and he had been with the family since before the children were born. "He's getting old now," the father said, watching Bramble lower himself carefully onto the hearthstones. "Doesn't run like he used to, but he still watches over the little ones like they're his own pups. Won't let them out of his sight." I brought Bramble a bowl of water and some scraps of meat from last night's supper. He accepted them gratefully, his tail wagging slowly, and then turned his attention back to the children who had discovered a spider in the corner of the common room and were observing it with solemn fascination. "Dogs know," the mother said softly, watching Bramble watch her children. "They know who belongs to their pack. They know who needs protecting. It's in their nature. Generations of breeding have made them this way. But sometimes I think it's more than that. Sometimes I think they choose us, not just because we feed them, but because they love us." I thought of the widow's letter, of the brown dog that had appeared at her door. I thought of all the stories of dogs who had traveled impossible distances to return to their families, who had sensed danger before it arrived, who had mourned their owners' deaths with grief as profound as any human's. "Perhaps both are true," I said. "Nature and choice, instinct and love, perhaps they are not as separate as we think." The mother smiled. "Perhaps not," she agreed. "Perhaps love is just another kind of instinct, the most powerful one of all." The children found a nest in the eaves of the stable, a swallow's nest, built of mud and straw, tucked into the angle where the roof met the wall. They showed it to me with great excitement, pointing at the tiny heads that peeped over the edge, the open beaks, waiting for food. "Can we watch them?" the older child asked. "Can we see the mama bird feed them?" I told them they could, as long as they stayed quiet and didn't frighten the birds. They settled themselves on a hay bale at a respectful distance and waited with a patience I had not expected from ones so young. Soon enough, the mother swallow returned, a flash of dark blue and orange, swooping into the stable with something in her beak. The babies erupted into frantic motion, all of them crying for attention. But she chose one and fed it, then flew away to find more. "She has to feed them all," the younger child whispered to his sister. "She can't play favorites." "How do you know?" the sister whispered back. "Because that's what mamas do." I smiled at their exchange and left them to their watching. There is wisdom in children sometimes, a clarity that we lose as we grow older and learn to complicate things. The swallow feeds her babies because that is what mothers do. The dog protects the children because that is what pack members do. Love is simple at its root. We are the ones who make it complicated. Later that afternoon, I found myself in conversation with the father about his journey and his destination. He was a carpenter by trade, he told me, and he was traveling to the mountains because his wife's elderly father could no longer maintain his home alone. "We're going to stay with him for the rest of the summer," he said. "Help him repair what needs repairing. Keep him company." "That is a kindness," I said. He shrugged. "It's family. It's what you do." We spoke of other things then, the roads, the weather, the changes both of us had seen in recent years. But eventually the conversation turned back to animals, as it seems to do so often these days. "My wife's father keeps bees," the carpenter said. "Has for 50 years. Says they're the wisest creatures he knows." "Bees?" I asked, surprised. I'd heard many animals called wise, wolves and ravens, horse and dogs, but never bees. "Oh, yes. He says a hive is like a small city, perfectly organized, everyone with a role to play. The workers gather food and build the comb, the nurses tend the young, the guards protect the entrance, and the queen is the heart of it all, the one who keeps everything connected. He leaned forward, warming to his subject. But what's really remarkable is how they communicate. They dance, you know. A bee that finds a good source of nectar comes back to the hive and dances, and the other bees watch and understand exactly where to go. Distance, direction, everything, all communicated through movement. I had heard of this before in fragments, but never explained so clearly. How do they know how to read the dance? I asked. That's what my father-in-law says is the wisest part. They're born knowing. It's in them, passed down from generation to generation. The language of bees, written into their very being. No one teaches them. They just know. He sat back, shaking his head in wonder. 50 years he's kept bees, and he says he's still learning from them. Still seeing things that surprise him. He calls them his little teachers. I thought about this long after the family retired for the night. Bees teaching wisdom, it seemed improbable, and yet I had learned so much from the travelers who told me of wolves and ravens, of cats and dogs. Why not bees? Why not any creature if we are willing to watch and listen? The 3rd day of July. The family departed this morning, the children waving from the back of the cart as it rolled away down the southern road. Bramble the dog trotted alongside for a few paces, then hopped up to join them, settling among the luggage with the air of one who knows his place in the world. I stood in the doorway and watched until they disappeared around the bend, then turned back to the quiet inn. The common room felt emptier after their presence, as it always does when lively guests depart. But the swallows remained in their nest, and the bees continued their work in the garden, and somewhere in the distance, a bird was singing. A pair of strangers arrived in the late afternoon, 2 men traveling together, one young and one old. They introduced themselves as uncle and nephew, journeying to the eastern coast for reasons they did not specify. The younger man was restless, pacing the common room and looking out the windows as though expecting something. The older man was calm, settling into a chair by the hearth, with the ease of someone accustomed to long travels. "Forgive my nephew," the older man said. "He's not used to waiting." "Waiting for what?" I asked. The older man smiled. He's not sure yet. That's the problem with the young. They're always rushing toward a future they haven't defined. The waiting is harder when you don't know what you're waiting for. I brought them food and drink, and over the course of the evening, the uncle told me stories of his life. He had been a hunter in his youth, he said, tracking game through the mountain forests. Later, he had become a guide, leading expeditions into the wilderness for wealthy clients who wanted to see the wild places without risking themselves. "I've spent more time with animals than with people," he said. "Probably know the habits of deer better than I know my own family. Does that seem strange to you?" "No," I said. "I think many people feel more at home in the wild than among their own kind." He nodded, pleased. The animals don't ask anything of you except respect, don't try to change you or improve you. They accept you as you are, and they expect you to accept them the same way. There's a kind of freedom in that. He told me of the mountain lions he had tracked, their strength and grace, their careful observation of everything around them. He told me of the elk he had watched in their autumn ruts, the males clashing antlers in displays that were fierce but rarely fatal. He told me of the eagles that nested on the highest cliffs, their nests as wide as a wagon, their young fierce and hungry from the moment they hatched. But the animal I think about most, he said, is the bear. Why? I asked. Because they're the most like us. He leaned back in his chair, his eyes distant. They walk upright sometimes. They use their paws almost like hands. They're curious, intelligent, capable of both great violence and great gentleness. And they remember. Remember. A bear will remember you for years. If you've wronged it, stolen its food, threatened its cubs, it will remember and it will hold a grudge. But if you've treated it well, it will remember that too. I knew a bear once in the high country that I encountered every season for 15 years. We had an understanding, she and I, a kind of truce. We knew each other and we respected each other and we stayed out of each other's way. What happened to her? I asked. She grew old, I suppose. One spring, she wasn't there anymore. I searched for her, found her dead, found the places she used to fish. Nothing. She had passed on as all things do. He paused. I mourned her in my way. She was the closest thing I had to a friend in those mountains. The nephew, who had been listening in silence, spoke up. That's sad, Uncle. Perhaps, the uncle said, but it's also beautiful, isn't it, that we can form bonds across the gap between species. That understanding doesn't require language. That a man and a bear can know each other and miss each other when the other is gone. The 4th day of July, a traveling mendicant arrived today, a monk of an order I do not recognize, wearing robes of undyed wool and carrying nothing but a walking staff and a small leather pouch. He asked for shelter in exchange for labor, and I set him to work chopping firewood, which we will need in the months to come, even if we do not need it now. He worked in silence through the morning, his strokes steady and precise. And when he paused to rest, I brought him water, and we sat together in the shade of the oak tree. You keep this place well, he said, looking around at the inn and the stable, the garden and the crossroads. It is a good thing to maintain a refuge. My father built it, I said. I only continue what he began. That is also a good thing, he said, to continue what others have begun. That is how the world is sustained, each generation receiving and passing on. We spoke of his order, which I learned was devoted to simplicity and service. They own nothing, travel always, and seek to learn from every creature they encounter. We believe, he said, that the divine manifests in all living things, not just humans, but animals, plants, even the smallest insects. Each one carries a spark of the sacred. To harm any creature unnecessarily is to harm that spark. Do you eat meat? I asked. We do, he said, when it is offered. We do not consider eating as harm, provided the killing was done with respect and the creature did not suffer needlessly. Life feeds on life. That is the nature of the world. But gratitude transforms the act. We give thanks for what we receive, and in doing so, we honor the life that was given. This struck me as a thoughtful approach, neither refusing the world's complexity nor embracing cruelty. A middle path, as so many wise traditions counsel. Tell me, I said, what the animals have taught your order. He smiled. Where shall I begin? The ants have taught us cooperation. How many small efforts can build something greater than any individual could achieve? The bees have taught us communication. That understanding need not require words. The birds have taught us trust, the willingness to leap into the unknown, believing that the air will support us. And the larger animals, I asked, the wolves have taught us loyalty, the bond that holds a pack together through hardship. The deer have taught us vigilance, the awareness of danger that keeps us alive. The bears have taught us solitude, that time alone is necessary for renewal. He took a long drink of water, his eyes thoughtful. And the horses have taught us partnership. That is perhaps the greatest lesson, that different species can work together, can trust each other, can build something neither could achieve alone. The bond between human and horse is a model for all relationships, I think. It is built on mutual respect and mutual benefit, on understanding and accommodation. I thought of the horses in my stable, the ones who had carried travelers here and would carry them away again. I thought of the gray mare who had spooked in the forest, and the bay draft horse of the brothers, and all the others who had passed through, each one a partner in the great endeavor of travel, carrying burdens and dreams across the distances of the world. Perhaps that is why horse keepers are often wise, I said. They have learned the lesson of partnership. The monk smiled. Perhaps. And perhaps innkeepers are wise for the same reason. You partner with travelers, after all, each of you giving something, each receiving. That is how the world should work. The 5th day of July. More travelers today. A merchant with a cart of pottery, a farmer returning from market, a young woman with a baby on her hip. The inn fills and empties like the tide, constant motion beneath the apparent stillness. The young woman asked me about the swallows in the stable, and I told her they had been nesting there for years. She nodded as though this confirmed something. My grandmother said swallows bring good luck to a house, she said, bouncing the baby gently, that they only nest where the spirits are kind. I have heard that belief before, I said, among travelers from the lowlands. That's where I'm from, she said. My grandmother still lives there. She knows all the old stories. which animals are lucky, which are unlucky, what it means when they behave in certain ways. I asked her to share some of her grandmother's wisdom, and she obliged, speaking softly so as not to wake the baby. Owls are messengers from the other world, she said. If you hear one calling your name, someone close to you will die soon. But if you see one in daylight, it means protection. The spirits are watching over you. And crows? I asked. Crows are tricksters. They like to cause trouble, but they're also very smart. Smarter than most people give them credit for. My grandmother says if you make friends with a crow, it will bring you gifts. Small things, bits of metal, shiny stones. They're curious, and they like to share what they find. What about dogs and cats? She smiled. Those are loyal companions. Everyone knows that. But cats are mysterious. My grandmother says they can see things we can't. Ghosts, spirits, things from the other side. That's why they sometimes stare at empty corners or hiss at nothing. They're not mad. They're seeing what we can't. The baby stirred, and she shifted her attention, murmuring comfort. But before she went to settle him, she added one more thing. The most important animal, though, is whatever animal loves you. It doesn't matter what the old stories say about species or omens. If an animal chooses to stay with you, to follow you, to protect you, that's the sacred one. That's the one the Spirit sent. I have been thinking about her words all evening. The most important animal is whatever animal loves you. It seems obvious when stated plainly, and yet how often do we overlook the creatures in our own lives, seeking meaning in distant wonders while ignoring the wonder at our feet? The tortoiseshell cat appeared in my kitchen tonight, as she sometimes does. She accepted the scraps I offered, then settled onto the windowsill and watched the darkening sky. I watched her watching and wondered what she saw. She is not my cat precisely. She belongs to no one, comes and goes as she pleases, but she has chosen to include my inn in her territory, to accept my food and my warmth. Perhaps that is a kind of love, not the effusive loyalty of a dog, but something quieter. A recognition, an acceptance. I reached out and touched her head, and she permitted it, her eyes half closing. We sat together as the stars emerged, two creatures sharing space and silence, asking nothing of each other but presence. The 6th day of July, a quiet day, the kind that invites contemplations. Few travelers on the road, the heat discouraging movement. I spent the morning in the kitchen garden, weeding between rows of vegetables, and the afternoon repairing a fence post that had begun to lean. Physical work clears the mind. By the time evening fell, I found myself thinking about the nature of animal lore, where it comes from, why it persists, what purpose it serves. The travelers who pass through my inn carry many beliefs about animals. Some are practical, observations about behavior and habit that help people coexist with the creatures around them. Some are superstitious, omens and portents, lucky animals and unlucky ones. Some are spiritual, ideas about souls and spirits, about the continuity of life across the boundary of death. These beliefs contradict each other sometimes. One traveler says ravens bring death. Another says they guide souls to rest. One believes cats are sacred guardians. Another fears them as witches, familiars. Yet all these beliefs share something in common. They grant animals importance. They insist that animals matter, that their presence in our lives has meaning. Perhaps that is the true purpose of animal lore. Not to explain the world accurately, science does that better, but to remind us that we are not alone in it. To insist that the creatures we share our lives with deserve attention, respect, even reverence. To counter the tendency to see animals as mere resources, mere obstacles, mere background to the human drama. Every belief that says an animal is lucky or unlucky, sacred or sinister, is also saying this animal is significant. Pay attention to it. Consider its presence. The content of the belief matters less than the attention it demands. The 7th day of July. The monk departed this morning, continuing his journey toward whatever destination awaits him. Before he left, he gave me a blessing. Words in a language I did not recognize, spoken with his hand resting on the door frame of my inn. "May this place remain a refuge," he said afterward, "for all who need one of whatever kind." I thanked him and watched him walk away down the road, his staff tapping rhythmically against the packed earth. He would travel until evening, I knew, then seek shelter wherever he found himself. In a village, in a barn, under the open sky. His order requires no certainty, only movement. After he had gone, I found myself examining the door frame where his hand had rested. There was nothing visible, of course, no mark, no trace. But I could not shake the feeling that something had been left behind. A residue of intention, perhaps. A blessing settling into the wood like oil into a wound. A horse trader arrived in the afternoon, a man named Falcons who travels a circuit through the frontier settlements, buying and selling horses. He brought with him 3 mares, a black, a chestnut, and a gray with dappled markings, and negotiated with me to stable them overnight while he visited the local farms. "Looking for buyers?" I asked. "Looking for the right buyers," he corrected. "I don't sell to just anyone. A horse is a responsibility, not a possession. I need to know they'll be treated well." This impressed me. Many traders care only about the price, not the welfare of what they sell. But Farkas, it seemed, took his role seriously. Over supper, he told me about the horses in his care. The black mare, he said, had belonged to a wealthy merchant who treated her poorly, kept her stabled constantly, rarely exercised, fed irregularly. When the merchant lost his fortune and had to sell, Farkas had bought her for a fraction of her worth and spent months rehabilitating her. "She's transformed now," he said, "gentle as a lamb, eager to please. All she needed was patience and consistency, and someone to show her that humans could be kind." "And the others?" I asked. The chestnut was young, barely trained, full of energy and promise. The gray was older, experienced, steady. The kind of horse that could teach a new rider the basics. Together, they represented different stages of a horse's life, different needs and temperaments. Every horse is an individual, Farkas said. That's what most people don't understand. They think you can treat all horses the same way, apply the same rules, expect the same responses. But horses are like people, each one shaped by their experiences, their personalities, their histories. To work with them well, you have to see them as individuals. This seemed to me a broader truth, applicable beyond horses. Every creature is an individual. The sheep that Rowan tended, the wolves that Aldrich studied, the bees that the carpenter's father-in-law kept, none of them were interchangeable. Each had its own story, its own nature, its own way of being in the world. Perhaps that is the most important lesson the animals can teach us, that life is singular, that every being, no matter how small or strange, is unique and unrepeatable, that the diversity of the world is not a problem to be solved, but a wonder to be appreciated. The 8th day of July. A strange occurrence this morning. I woke to find a dead mouse on my doorstep. Not unusual in itself, for the tortoiseshell cat sometimes leaves such gifts. But beside the mouse was something else. A small, smooth stone, white as bone, with a hole worn through its center. I picked up the stone and turned it in my fingers. It was river polished, probably, tumbled smooth by years of flowing water. Such stones are sometimes called hag stones or witch stones, believed to offer protection or sight into the spirit world when looked through. Where had the cat found it? And why had she left it for me, paired with her hunting trophy? I thought of the young woman's words about crows bringing gifts. Perhaps cats did the same in their way. Perhaps the cat was offering me something, protection perhaps, or a message I did not know how to read. I washed the stone and strung it on a leather cord, hanging it in my window where it catches the morning light. Whether it has any power, I cannot say. But it reminds me that the boundaries between human and animal are not as firm as we often imagine, that communication flows in both directions, that the creatures in our lives may be trying to tell us things, if only we knew how to listen. The summer stretches on hot and golden. The Crossroads see travelers every day now, merchants and migrants, pilgrims and wanderers. Each one brings stories, and many of those stories are about animals. I have filled pages with their tales, and I find that I could fill many more. The subject is inexhaustible because animals are everywhere. They share our homes and our roads, our fields and our forests. They work alongside us and live among us and die with us. Their stories are woven through ours, impossible to separate. Perhaps that is the final lesson, that we are not the only storytellers, that the animals have their own narratives, their own histories, their own meanings. We cannot hear their stories directly. We lack the language, but we can see their traces. in the footprints around the oak tree, in the nest, in the stable eaves, in the gifts left on doorsteps, and the warnings given in the night. The world is full of stories. We need only pay attention. And so I close this series of entries, though I know it is not truly closed. There will be more animals, more tales, more travelers with wisdom to share. The wild company we keep is with us always, from birth to death and perhaps beyond. They are our companions on this journey, whether we acknowledge them or not. I am grateful for them, for the wolf who warns the courier, for the dog who guards the widow, for the raven who watches from my window, for the cat who leaves me gifts I do not understand. For all of them, I am grateful. The 9th day of July. Today brought a visitor I have not seen in many years, a woman named Isolde, who passed through this inn when I was new to keeping it. She remembered me, though I confess I did not remember her until she spoke of the circumstances of her earlier visit. A harsh winter, a sick child, a desperate flight to find medicine in the coastal towns. The child recovered, she told me over tea in the common room. She is grown now with children of her own. I never forgot the kindness you showed us that night. I was touched that she had remembered, and more touched when she told me the purpose of her current journey. She was traveling to visit her daughter, the child who had been sick, and to meet her new grandchild for the first time. Life turns in circles, she said. I passed through here, fleeing from death, and now I pass through again, approaching new life. This crossroads seems to mark the turning point. We spoke of many things as the afternoon wore on. She asked about the changes I'd seen in the years since her first visit, and I told her of the travelers and their stories, the repairs I'd made to the inn, the seasons that had come and gone like breathing. But eventually, as conversations often do here, our talk turned to animals. My daughter keeps goats now, Isolde said. A small herd, enough to provide milk and cheese for the family. She learned to tend them from her husband's mother, who had kept goats all her life. Goats are clever creatures, I said, remembering the brothers who had spoken of their father's herd. Too clever, Isolde agreed with a laugh, but also loyal in their way. My daughter has a nanny goat who follows her everywhere, sleeps outside her bedroom door, waits by the garden when she's working, bleats if she's out of sight too long. The children joke that the goat thinks she's their mother. She told me other stories of life on her daughter's homestead. The chickens who had personalities as distinct as any humans, the barn cat who had appointed herself guardian of the baby's cradle, the swallows who returned every spring to nest in the same corner of the same barn. Animals remember, she said. That's what I've learned watching them all these years. They remember places and people, kindness and cruelty. The swallows come back to the same barn because their parents nested there and their parents before them. It's home, passed down through generations. I thought of the swallows in my own stable, returning year after year. I thought of the raven in the oak tree, watching the crossroads with its patient eyes. I thought of all the creatures who had made this place their home, who considered it theirs as much as I considered it mine. Perhaps we share the land more than we own it, I said. Isolde nodded. Perhaps we do. The animals were here first, after all, and they'll be here long after we're gone. The 10th day of July. A letter arrived today from a scholar I once met, a man named Theodric, who studies the natural world, cataloging plants and animals with careful attention to their habits and habitats. He passed through the inn 2 summers ago, and we had spoken at length about his work. His letter was brief but intriguing. He had been researching the folklore of animals. Well, he wrote, collecting the beliefs and stories that different cultures tell about the creatures they live among. He wanted to know if I had gathered any such tales in my years of innkeeping, and if so, would I be willing to share them? I sat for a long time with his letter in my hands, thinking about what I have written in this journal over the past weeks. The wolves that warn, the ravens that messenger, the cats that guard thresholds, the dogs that arrive unbidden, the bees that dance their knowledge, the horses that see spirits, the bears that remember. All of it folklore in a sense, stories passed from mouth to ear, beliefs transmitted through generations, wisdom that may or may not be literally true, but that carries meaning nonetheless. I began a reply to Theodric, though I found it difficult to know where to start. How do you condense weeks of conversation into a letter? How do you capture the living quality of stories told by firelight, stripped of context and voice? In the end, I wrote only this, that the animals live among us carrying their own mysteries, that the travelers who pass through my inn bring countless beliefs about what those mysteries might mean, and that I have come to believe the beliefs themselves matter more than their accuracy. The attention we pay to animals shapes how we treat them. The stories we tell about them shape how we see them. If we tell stories of wisdom and kinship, we will look for wisdom and kinship. If we tell stories of danger and otherness, we will find only threats. I do not know if Theodric will find this useful for his scholarship, but it is the truest thing I know. Late evening now. The inn is quiet, with only Isolde remaining as a guest. She will depart tomorrow for the final leg of her journey, and I find myself already anticipating the silence she will leave behind. We sat together in the common room after supper, speaking little, simply watching the candle flame. The white candle, as always, burned steadily, neither growing nor diminishing. Its light caught the hag stone in the window, making it glow like a small moon. "That's a pretty thing," Isolde said, noticing my gaze. "Where did you find it?" I told her about the cat's gift, and she smiled. My grandmother would have said, "That's a powerful omen," she said. "A stone with a hole is a window into the other world. You look through it and see what's hidden." "Have you ever tried it?" I asked. "Once when I was young, I found a stone like that in a riverbed and looked through it at the forest edge." She paused, her expression distant. I didn't see anything unusual, just trees and shadow, but I felt something, a kind of awareness, as if the forest was looking back at me, as if I had announced my presence and something had taken notice. That sounds unsettling, I said. It was, but also wonderful in a way, like realizing you're not alone in the universe, that there are other presences, other awarenesses, sharing the world with you. I looked at the hag stone hanging in the window. I had not tried looking through it yet. Part of me was curious. Part of me was afraid. Perhaps I'll try it sometime, I said. Perhaps, Isolde agreed, but there's no rush. The stone will wait. Whatever it has to show you will still be there when you're ready to see it. The 11th day of July. Isolde departed this morning, and I stood in the doorway watching until her figure disappeared down the southern road. The day stretched ahead, empty of guests but full of work. The eternal work of maintaining an inn, of preparing for the travelers who may or may not come. As I went about my tasks, I found myself thinking about what Isolde had said last night. The stone will wait. Whatever it has to show you will still be there when you're ready to see it. There is wisdom in that, the wisdom of patience, of not forcing revelations before their time. The animals live that way, I think. They do not rush toward understanding. They simply exist moment by moment, paying attention to what is before them. Perhaps that is why they perceive things we miss. They are not distracted by anxiety about the future or regret about the past. They are fully present in the present. I picked up the hag stone and held it to my eye, looking through the hole at the common room around me. The furniture looked the same. The hearth looked the same. The white candle burned as it always burned, but there was something, a quality of light, perhaps, or a sense of depth, as if the room extended further than I had realized, as if there were layers I had never noticed, revealed now through this small window of worn stone. I lowered the stone, and the feeling passed. The room was just a room again, familiar and finite. Perhaps that is what the other world is. Not a separate place, but the same place seen more deeply, the layers beneath the surface, the dimensions beyond the obvious. The animals may see it all the time. The cat staring at empty corners, the dogs sensing presences we cannot detect. Perhaps the hagstone simply lets us glimpse what they always see, or perhaps I'm making too much of a stone with a hole in it, left by a cat who was probably just playing with an interesting object. Perhaps some mysteries are not meant to be solved, only appreciated. The 12th day of July. A caravan arrived today, 5 wagons loaded with goods bound for the northern markets. They have brought the inn to life, filling the common room with voices and laughter, filling the stable with horses and mules. Among the travelers is a woman who keeps hunting birds, falcons, she called them, though they are unlike any bird I have seen. They are hooded and leashed to perches, their feathers gray and brown, their talons curved like tiny sickles. Her name is Katrin, and she trains the birds to hunt small game for wealthy clients in the eastern cities. It is an ancient art, she tells me, passed down through generations. Her grandmother taught her, who learned from her grandmother before that. The bond between falcon and falconer is like nothing else, she said when I asked about her work. They are not pets. They never forget they are wild. Every day they choose to return to you. Every day you have to earn their trust anew. She showed me one of the birds, a female, larger than the males, with fierce gold eyes. When Katrine removed the hood, the falcon turned her head sharply, taking in her surroundings with an intensity that seemed almost supernatural. She's hunting, Katrine explained. Always hunting, even when there's no prey. That's who she is. A falcon is hunger and focus given wings. I asked how the training worked, and Katrine described a process of patience and repetition, teaching the bird to associate the falconer with food, then gradually extending the distance from which she would return, then introducing her to live prey and rewarding her for the kill. But you can't force any of it, she said. You can only offer opportunities and hope she takes them. If you try to dominate her, you'll break her spirit, and she'll be useless. The partnership only works if both parties choose it. This struck me as profoundly true, not just for falcons, but for all relationships between humans and animals. We cannot force their trust. We can only create the conditions in which trust might grow, and hope that it does. What do you love about it? I asked. Katrine thought for a long moment before answering. The moment when she comes back to my glove. Every time, it's a choice. She could fly away and never return. Nothing is stopping her, but she chooses to come back. She chooses to stay with me. She smiled. There's no feeling like it in the world, to be chosen freely by a creature who owes you nothing. The 13th day of July. The caravan departed this morning, and with it Katrine and her falcons. The inn feels smaller in their absence, though I know it is the same size it has always been. I find myself thinking about choice, about the falcon who chooses to return, the dog who chooses to follow, the cat who chooses to stay. We often speak of animals as though they are bound by instinct, unable to make decisions the way humans do. But watching the creatures who pass through this inn, I am not so sure. The gray mare could have bolted when she was frightened, but she allowed herself to be calmed. The old dog Bramble could have wandered off, but he chose to stay with his family. The raven in the oak tree could fly anywhere in the world, but it keeps returning to watch the crossroads. Perhaps choice is not as uniquely human as we believe. Perhaps animals make decisions all the time, small decisions about where to go and what to do, large decisions about who to trust and where to belong. Perhaps the difference between humans and animals is not the presence or absence of choice, but the stories we tell about it. We tell ourselves that our choices are free, that we are the authors of our own lives. We tell ourselves that animals are driven by instinct, merely reacting to stimuli. But who can say what passes through a falcon's mind as it decides whether to return? Who can say what calculations a wolf makes when it chooses to warn a stranger. The boundaries we draw between ourselves and the animals may be more permeable than we like to admit. The 14th day of July. Today, I rest. The past weeks have been full of travelers, full of stories, full of thoughts about the wild company we keep. I have written more in this journal than I have in months, and my hand aches from the effort. But the ache is a good one. It means I have recorded something that matters. Something that might otherwise have been lost, scattered like seeds in the wind, as I wrote before. The stories of wolves and ravens, horses and sheep, bees and bears and falcons, the wisdom of travelers who have spent their lives among animals and have learned from them. I do not know who will read these pages. Perhaps no one. Perhaps the journal will sit on my shelf until I'm gone and then be thrown away or burned as worthless. But I do not write for an audience. I write to remember. I write to understand. I write because the act of writing itself is a form of attention, a way of honoring the creatures and the stories that have touched my life. The white candle burns, the raven watches from the oak tree, the cat sleeps in the kitchen window, the hagstone hanging nearby. The world goes on full of mysteries I will never solve, and meanings I will never fully grasp, and I am content with that. I am content to be a small piece of a vast tapestry, one thread among countless others. The wild company we keep surrounds us always, and I am grateful to be part of it.
And so we come to the end of another evening at the Crossroads. Thank you for spending this time in the company of wolves and ravens, of horses and sheep, of all the wild souls who share our world. May their stories stay with you as you drift toward sleep. If you enjoyed this journey, consider leaving a like or subscribing to the channel so you can join us again when next the candle is lit. Until we meet again, dear traveler, rest well, dream deep, and may you always find welcome company on the road. Good night.